It began on a Thursday, one of those damp, breathless mornings where the clouds sagged low and the streets felt like they were holding their breath. Dr. Edward Mallory, a seasoned general practitioner, noticed something unsettling. Patients shuffled into his clinic with hollow expressions, voices hushed as if afraid to speak too loud. They all complained of the same strange symptom, a suffocating pressure in their ears. But it wasn't just pressure, it was whispers, faint, constant, inescapable. At first, he thought it might be a new flu strain or maybe an environmental irritant, but by the fourth patient, each with identical symptoms and a dazed, haunted look in their eyes, his professional instincts were overruled by something deeper, dread, especially when they began to say the same phrase over and over. "It's like something is whispering inside me." Edward's skin tightened with goosebumps. He'd never heard fear described that way. The hospital staff mocked his concern. Stress, they said. Group psychosis. He tried to believe them. But patients weren't just scared. They were unraveling. A woman in her 40s clawed at her ears until they bled. Another, an elderly man, threw himself down a flight of stairs to silence what he claimed was a voice calling his dead wife's name from inside his skull. Then came George, a gentle, soft-spoken mailman, dead in his apartment, eyes ripped open with bloody fingernails. His body was found curled under the kitchen table, a tape recorder clutched in his hand. Edward listened to the tape, static, then a whisper, then George's voice, frantic, pleading, "Make it stop, please. It's eating me from the inside. It's not a sound, it's a presence." Edward began documenting every case. He kept a journal, made audio logs, even installed a voice recorder in his clinic. One night he played back a session. He expected nothing but his own calm tones and a patient's fearful murmurs. But there was something else, a faint hiss beneath the conversation. He turned up the volume. "Let me in." The words were not spoken by anyone in the room. They slithered between sentences like something parasitic. Edward felt his heart pound as he whispered to the recorder, "Who are you?" And the reply came, slow and deliberate, "You know me." He recoiled, dropping the device. That night, he didn't sleep, nor did his wife, Anna. She woke screaming, claiming something had breathed across her face. Their cat wouldn't enter the bedroom. Edward sat in the corner with a knife until daylight burned through the curtains. The phenomenon escalated. Other towns reported identical cases. People with no contact between them, suffering the same hallucinations, the same voices. Except it wasn't hallucination. The whispers were spreading like a virus, not through blood or air, but through sound. A corrupted melody of words passed from one mind to another like a plague of thought. Hospitals flooded. Doctors were clueless. People began reporting shared dreams, dark corridors, endless tunnels, figures with no mouths whispering through their skin. A nurse slit her wrist during a shift, her dying breath a mangled hymn in a dead language. Children drew symbols in blood. The authorities blamed drugs. Edward knew better. He sent samples to virology labs. Blood, spinal fluid, hair, everything came back clean, impossibly clean. The disease hid itself, not from the body, but from understanding. Edward's own dreams grew violent. He awoke one night to Anna standing over him, whispering to herself in rhythmic repetition. Her eyes were open, but vacant, like a puppet caught between commands. "It's inside me now," she whispered, her lips trembling. When he touched her, She screamed with such primal terror that the windows cracked. Her face twisted in ways no human expression should, and then she collapsed. When she awoke, her memory was gone, but her ears bled for 3 days. Edward called in a favor from an old colleague, Dr. Adrian Teller, a former combat zone psychologist. Adrian saw Anna and turned pale. "This isn't illness," he said. "It's invasion." Adrian believed the phenomenon was mimetic, a psychic infection transferred by exposure to sound or thought. Once a person heard the whisper, their mind was compromised. It wasn't a parasite in the traditional sense. It was worse, an idea, a living, predatory idea that took root and grew in silence. Edward and Adrian set up a soundproof room in the basement. They communicated only through notes. Still, the whispers found a way in. They recorded them, never directly, but through background feedback, the static hum of the environment. In one clip, the whisper uttered a single word in an ancient tongue. When translated, devour, Adrian snapped. He raved about voices crawling in his skull, about worms in the shape of letters. He tried to burn his own tongue to stop it from spreading. Edward sedated him. He never regained consciousness. Anna stopped eating. She claimed everything tasted like breath. Her eyes no longer focused. Instead, they darted toward corners where nothing stood. She smiled at shadows. She whispered Edward's name from another room, even when she slept. He locked her in a padded room, weeping the entire time. He began hearing whispers when he wasn't awake, words folding into his dreams. Sometimes he'd wake with his own voice echoing in the room, despite never having spoken. His reflection in the mirror smiled before he did. He stopped trusting his thoughts. He wrote obsessively, desperate to record everything before it erased itself. The town fell into chaos. People walked the streets in silence, mouths moving, eyes glazed. Phones were dead. Radios broadcast only static. Dogs howled at nothing. The mayor shot himself during a live press conference, mumbling, "I can't unhear it." Edward wandered the hospital halls, alone, passing rooms where patients stared at blank televisions, waiting for something that had already arrived. One night, he saw Anna in a dream, but she wasn't Anna anymore. Her mouth opened too wide, and from it poured a voice that didn't match her face. "You brought us here," it said. "You called us by listening." Edward awoke to find his journal rewritten, not in his handwriting, in a spiraling script that bled off the page and into the floor. He tried to leave town, but the roads never led anywhere. Every turn brought him back to the clinic, to his office, to the soundproof room. The whispers grew louder when he moved. They grew teeth when he resisted. One evening, he sat in silence and heard not voices, but chewing, wet, rhythmic, coming from inside his skull. Anna's room was empty, just claw marks and hair. The whisper had finally hollowed her out, and now it was looking for a new host. Edward looked at the mirror again. This time, the reflection blinked when he didn't. He knew what George had tried to do, and he finally understood why. He took the scalpel and carved into his ears, anything to make the voices stop, but it was too late. The whisper wasn't in the ears anymore. It had moved deeper, into the language, into the silence between thoughts. It lived in hesitation, in the hum between breaths. He screamed, but even his scream wasn't his own voice anymore. When they found him, Edward was muttering backwards, his mouth moving in reverse, his eyes rolling with each syllable. He'd written one word over and over across the walls, the ceiling, even his own skin. Listen. I never believed in stories that began with "this really happened" until the night my brother called me at 2:17 a.m, whispering like he was hiding from something. "Don't come here," he said. "Don't. Listen. Just remember I tried to stop it." Then the line went dead. I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen of my phone, pulse pounding. My brother Liam was a doctor, a realist. If he sounded afraid, it wasn't just fear, it was madness creeping through logic. By morning, I couldn't shake the dread chewing at the edges of my sanity. I drove 3 hours to the small rural hospital where he worked, St. Bertram's Medical, nestled among fog-wrapped pine trees, shrouded in eerie quiet. The parking lot was empty, the front entrance locked. No lights, just an odd humming in the air, like a deep, low frequency that you could feel in your bones but never quite hear. I circled to the back and found a security light blinking above the ambulance bay, casting long, twitching shadows across the concrete. I knocked hard. Silence. Then a soft creak. The door opened. A woman in scrubs stood there, her pupils dilated, her expression lost in something between terror and detachment. Her voice was brittle. "You shouldn't be here," she said, almost like a warning to herself. Her eyes avoided mine. "He said no one should come." Before I could ask who he was, she turned and motioned me inside. The stench was unbearable, like rust, rot, and the sourness of fever sweat. Hallways that once housed life now echoed with empty breaths and something else, something faint whispering beneath the walls. I asked about Liam. She whispered, "If you came, it means it's too late." Room after room, sealed in thick plastic, windows covered in blackout sheets. I opened a door I shouldn't have. Inside, a bed was soaked in black liquid. The patient, if it was still a patient, lay twisted, limbs snapped at impossible angles, skin bruised with dark veins that looked like they were moving. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. In the next bed, a woman was strapped down, whispering, not screaming, whispering, 17, 17, over and over, like a prayer from a forgotten god. Her voice was too calm. I leaned closer, desperate for understanding. Her eyes snapped to mine, and in that second, I felt something move inside me, a flutter behind my ribs. Something wrong. I found Liam in the sublevel, the basement that wasn't on any official floor plan. A narrow stairwell led to it, hidden behind an unmarked door. The deeper I went, the more the air thickened, heavy like syrup. At the bottom, glass walls revealed a makeshift quarantine chamber. He stood behind the glass, his face pale, soaked in sweat. "You should have listened," he murmured. "It's in the air now. It listens. It learns." He slid a folder through a sealed drawer in the wall. Inside were medical reports, cases stacked like dominoes. High fever, black rashes, dehydration, tremors. All came from a village 2 towns away. All died within 72 hours, except one, Mara Aldrin, a name that chilled me, though I didn't know why. She wasn't sick, Liam said. Not in the way we understand sickness. She said it wanted out, that it was using her body like a hotel room. I swallowed hard. What came out? He looked down. A mist. Soundless. For a second, it shimmered in the shape of something almost human. He met my eyes again. One nurse inhaled it. 48 hours later, she tore her own fingernails out trying to dig through her skin. She said it was inside, watching. "It needs minds," Liam whispered. "It's not a virus. It's a parasite of perception. The moment you understand it, it's already inside." The whispering. It's the infection speaking to itself, learning your weaknesses. He rolled up his sleeve. His veins pulsed with inky black threads that moved like thoughts. I hear it all the time now. At first, it spoke in numbers, then in voices I knew. Then it started using my voice. I was shaking. I could hear a soft tapping behind the walls. Not rats. Rhythmic. Calculated. "We need to get out," I said. Liam shook his head. "You can't leave with it inside. That's how it spreads. Through memory. Through fear. That's what feeds it." He handed me a syringe. "If it starts, if it whispers in your sleep, don't wait. This'll stop your heart in 60 seconds. I fled that night, drove back to the city with windows down, breathing the cold air like it could wash me clean. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Not because they wouldn't believe me, but because just telling the story might be enough. It's been 3 days. I've locked myself inside. I've avoided mirrors. I've unplugged every speaker in my apartment. And still, sometimes, I hear tapping. Last night, I dreamed of Mara Aldrin. She was sitting at the foot of my bed, her skin paper thin, her eyes black and glistening. She didn't move her lips, but I heard her in my head. "You let it see you." I woke up drenched in sweat. But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was the humming. That low, deep hum I had heard outside the hospital. It was coming from inside my walls now, vibrating through my bones. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Only a number. 70. I now understand what Liam meant. The fever isn't the beginning. It's the signal. A flare for something that hunts by thought, that invades by understanding. Every word I've written here, every line, is a window it might crawl through. If you've read this far, I'm sorry. It sees you now too. And if you start to dream of numbers, don't let it finish the sequence. Because once it reaches 21, there's no waking up. It began on a wet Monday morning. The sky hung low and grey over the town of Ridgewell, a place already with enough gloom to spare. Clara Hill, a 42-year-old biology teacher, was sipping coffee by her window when she noticed the ambulance parked across the street. It had no lights, no siren, just waiting. That alone unsettled her. She saw 2 paramedics helping an old man into the house across from hers, the Mitchell residence, which had been empty for over a year. Her curiosity stirred. She hadn't heard anything about the house being sold. Hours passed. Clara left for work, but all day her mind returned to that quiet ambulance, that pale, sunken-eyed man. Something in his posture, the trembling way he stepped, stayed with her like an aftertaste she couldn't shake. By Friday, a strange faint odour lingered in the neighbourhood. Clara noticed it first when she opened her car door. It was like damp earth mixed with rust. Others began mentioning it too, in passing. Maybe something died in the sewer, one neighbour said, but no one did anything about it. Not really. Until Clara woke up in the middle of the night, choking. The smell had seeped into her house. Thick, heavy. It coated her throat. She stumbled downstairs, gagging, and found nothing. No gas leak, no smoke, just that scent. She opened all the windows, breathing through her sleeve. When she looked out, she saw him, the man from across the street, standing perfectly still on his porch, staring at her. His mouth was open, but he wasn't breathing. By the next week, the neighborhood buzzed with murmurs. Pets were going missing. A child had fainted in class, vomiting some pale mucus that none of the doctors could identify. Clara herself had noticed odd patches on her arms, slightly discolored spots that looked like bruises but didn't hurt. She showed them to her colleague, who brushed it off as stress. But Clara knew her own body. She kept scratching at the patches. They didn't bleed. They didn't itch. They just spread. Beneath the skin, she felt movement sometimes, brief and subtle, like something small was swimming under her flesh. She didn't tell anyone. She couldn't, not until she was sure. She began watching the house across the street more closely. The man didn't leave, but each time she saw him, he looked slightly less human. At school, 3 other teachers called in sick. One of them, Mr. Leone, collapsed during morning announcements. Clara rushed to his side. His skin was slick with sweat, cold to the touch, but his body burned with fever. As he convulsed, he whispered something strange. "It's in the air, beneath the bones." His eyes rolled back. The school was shut down that afternoon for sanitation. Clara went home and locked every window. Her phone rang. It was her neighbor Stephanie, whispering frantically, "They took my husband. They came in suits, hazmat suits. He just had a nosebleed, Clara. Then they dragged him away. No ambulance, nothing." Clara began documenting everything. Fever, smell, skin, dreams. Yes, dreams. Everyone she talked to reported the same recurring nightmare. Dark tunnels, pale figures crawling from walls, whispering in dead tongues. Clara hadn't had it, not yet. But when she finally did, she woke up screaming. Her pillow was soaked in blood from her nose. She ran to the bathroom. In the mirror, she saw something behind her eyes, something moving. It was a flicker, a ripple. She screamed and backed away. When she dared to look again, it was gone. But the bruises had spread across her collarbone, and now her veins. They glowed faintly in the dark. Desperate, Clara broke into the Mitchell house. Inside, the walls were smeared with brownish-red handprints. It smelled like the same rot that haunted her home, but deeper, richer, more biological. In the basement, she found documents, medical files, biological studies, all bearing the same title, Protocol Pale. One photograph stood out, a microscopic image of a cellular structure. It was labeled foreign host tissue. Clara trembled. She recognized the pattern. She had taught it once. It was parasitic. It replicated by burrowing into host DNA and mimicking healthy cells until it replaced the entire system. The next day, Ridgewell was locked down. No internet, no phone service. Military trucks rolled in during the night. Loudspeakers ordered everyone to remain indoors. Helicopters circled. Clara watched through her window, feverish and dizzy. Then the power went out. She lit candles. Her eyes ached. Her bones throbbed. When she pressed her fingers to her temple, she felt something pulsing beneath the skin. Her neighbor's house caught fire that night, but no sirens came. Clara saw pale figures, once human, now grey, hairless, blind, walking out of the flames without flinching. Clara stopped writing, speaking, eating. She sat in the dark, sweating, twitching, waiting. She wasn't alone anymore. Something whispered to her now, from behind her own thoughts. It told her things, horrible things, in a voice that sounded like her own. She opened her veins once to try and get it out. Nothing came. No blood. Only a milky, thread-like substance that wriggled. She laughed then, cried, screamed until she passed out. She woke up days later, or maybe hours. Time had melted. Her skin was smooth now, pale, perfect, but it wasn't hers. When they finally broke into her home, military, masked and armoured, they didn't find Clara. They found a note, scrawled in blood, stuck to the fridge. "It's not a disease." One of the soldiers picked it up and read it aloud. They laughed nervously. Then one of them began to cough violently. He dropped to his knees, trembling. The others stepped back, but it was too late. He looked up at them and smiled.